Registered and licensed dietitian. Visit Nutrisys.com. I am here making the last of my meat pies. I have taken from this dough instead of just making all at once. So now I have 5 left. As you see, you do see one that looks a little different than the others. It's not a circle, so I'm going to give you a little tip. So do your circle. I took my bowl. I'm making my circle like I did the other ones. So I twist it around and then I wiggle it to make sure it cuts out the circle. Then you take the edges, and instead of trying to make another meat pie from this tiny dough, just put it, you can just put the little piece of dough in the middle. You can spread it out evenly if you so choose between all 5 of the meat pies, or you can just put it in one. So you can have one meat pie that's pretty big. It's up to you. I think we'll go ahead and just put it in one. So this one will be a little bigger and thicker than the others. So that's my secret to keeping the circular shape. So just kind of flatten it out. So I'm showing you what this looks like after removing it from the refrigerator and letting it sit on your counter for about, I would say about 30 minutes. And if you see here, it's not as flaky coming up. It's not getting stuck to the granite. So it does make a difference. So if you leave it on your counter for 3 hours, then it's going to be too soft. But it will still work. But I highly recommend you letting your dough rest for 30 minutes in the refrigerator and then bringing it out right before use. You can let it on the counter for about 30 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and egg white all of my dough. And you can use a whole egg, that's fine too. The whole egg is good for about 10 meat pies. And then I use the same brush on top of the meat pie. This is just an egg white wash. This one looks a little bit thick. Uh-oh, no worries. Thank God we had enough to go around, so. Okay, so I made another batch of the meatless, I should say, protein. I used tofu this time, so if you look up my tofu crumble recipe, then you will be able to make this kind of meat pie with tofu. Last time I made it with Beyond Meat. Today I made it with tofu. And it's basically the tofu crumbles with sauteed carrots, onions, habanero pepper. One habanero pepper to me didn't taste spicy enough, but it's up to you if you want to put more or use less. And a little salt or salt substitute to taste, and thyme for spice. So now we're going to go ahead and start putting a little circle in the middle of each one. I'm not anticipating that we're going to use up all this, but you never know, we might. And of course, you're only going to put it in the very middle. You don't want to put too much because then you can't close it very well. Oh, and potatoes, I forgot to tell you. I added potato. And flour and water. The flour and water slurry. Make it moist so that once it's done and baked, it won't be over dry in the oven. So, okay, this might actually go around. Ooh, actually I may have just enough. I thought I was gonna have too much, but great. All right. So we made just enough for the 5 meat pies. I put it in the freezer as soon as it cooked because I wanted to hurry up and cool it off rapidly. And thank God. So if you use warm meat or meatless for your meat pie, you will see real quickly why you should cool it down. It will melt a hole into your dough. So can't stress enough how important it is to either just let it cool down on the stove for a couple of hours or just put it in the freezer. It's very cold, and I only had it in the freezer for about 30 minutes. So while it was a perfect timing actually. As soon as you're done cooking your meat or meatless vegetable filling, pop it in the freezer. And I just put it in a container like this in the freezer without a lid. And then I started manipulating my dough and making them into the circles. As soon as I was done with the circles, I went into the freezer and got my the insides, the meatless filling. All right, so I've kind of molded each filling and we are good to go. So now we can seal. I will take my fork to kind of help push in the, let's take your fork to push inside the filling so that it doesn't fall out. This one might have a little too much, but then again, this is our biggest meat pie. But no, it looks pretty good and it's molding really nicely just due to the simple fact that it's frozen. It's pretty cold. It would probably fall apart a lot more if it were warm. So we are closing up our meat pies. I'm doing it all at once. I think this process makes it go faster when you just do one task at a time instead of one meat pie at a time. There are a lot of steps to meat pie. You see how long it's taken me to finish off my dough. It's taken days because I just didn't want to spend my entire morning or a whole afternoon playing with meat pies. So it's been a crazy week with the kids and trying to get business taken care of. Okay, so we have closed everything. Next is to seal it. So we're just gonna take our fork. I'm gonna clean it off so it's not all messy. I'm just sealing it with the fork. This is a wonderful method. It yields beautiful looking meat pies, a nice design, but also it just helps to close your meat pies. So we are sealing it with the egg white on the inside. Kind of have to shape in the meat pie as you do this. My oven is heating up pretty nicely, almost at 350. And you can put it at 375 for 20 minutes or 350 for like 25 minutes. Last time I did it at 375. This time I'll just do it at 350. It doesn't matter, honestly. I've done both. All right, last one. Making sure there's no filling popping out there. Sorry, my blender was kind of in the way. Okay, so I'm sealing my meat pies. And that's it. Now my dough is finally used. So now I can kind of shapen it. Make sure it's not, that it's kind of even-ish. Okay, all that's left are 2 more steps. You would think it would be done. Let's just pop it in the oven already, right? But there's a couple more steps. Sometimes people forget, especially the first times, few times you make it. So easy to forget. So now I'm brushing my meat pie with the egg wash. You can use egg white or the whole egg, like I mentioned before. So this particular meat pie recipe, you don't necessarily have to put an egg in the dough, but I did and it came out beautifully. Notice how the color of the meat pie looks very rich. I like this because you can control the amount of sodium you put in your food. You can control what is in your food. This can be a no MSG food for you. You can't control that when you cater or when you get fast food. So you can ask them to do it, but people cook the way they cook. Okay, so now just gonna do 2 fork stabs in each. Some people do 3, that's fine too. Either one, I don't see a huge difference, and that's just so that it has a little bit of ventilation. Since this one's the biggest, let's do 3 on this one. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll know this is Dottie's meat pies. It's the biggest. Okay, so now you can go ahead and spray your baking pan, or if you want to use parchment paper, you can do so by spraying and then putting the parchment paper, or you could just put it on directly. There's so much butter in this recipe that I really feel that you should be okay. So I'm just lining my meat pie up. See, it's slippery. So I'm going to kind of adjust it here. It's looking pretty cramped. Might actually need another pan because these are pretty big, good sized meat pies. We're going to kind of play with this here. I think that should be okay. So I've got our 5 meat pies. We're popping it in the oven.